What do you get when a royal controversy meets a sharp-tongued interviewer in front of a live audience? Tonight you'll witness the start of a dramatic exchange between Meghan Markle and Piers Morgan. What began as a respectful conversation soon spiraled into chaos. By the time this part of the show ended, even the audience looked uneasy, and Piers Morgan was left facing one of the toughest calls of his career. The studio lights beamed down like thousands of tiny eyes, casting a bright, almost unnatural glow over the set. The opening music faded out as the cameras zoomed in on Piers Morgan. He calmly adjusted his tie, smiled confidently, and greeted viewers with his usual charm. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back," he said politely, though with an edge to his voice. "Tonight I'm joined by Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, or as she prefers now, Meghan, independent entrepreneur and advocate." The crowd gave polite applause, though a few exchanged uncertain glances. Meghan walked in from stage left, her white silk blouse gleaming beneath a sharp black blazer that hugged her figure just right. She strode confidently to her seat, offering a controlled smile, as if she knew something others didn't. Piers stood to shake her hand. "Thank you for being here," Meghan responded smoothly, taking her seat and crossing her legs. "Happy to clear up a few things," she said. "People always seem confused about who I am." Her voice was calm, yet her words carried a slight bite, hinting at what was ahead. Piers gave a soft laugh. "Let's see if we can sort out that confusion tonight. Let's start with the big question, leaving the royal family. Do you regret it, or was it something that had to happen?" Meghan tilted her head slowly, looking almost bored by the question. "Well," she replied coolly, "if you'd been paying attention, you'd know I left because I had more important things to do than play dress-up for the tabloids." A ripple moved through the audience. Some gasped quietly, others gave awkward chuckles. Piers remained composed. "So you saw the monarchy more as a performance than a duty?" he asked. Meghan's lips curled into a smirk. "I think dressing up and waving from a balcony doesn't exactly count as duty," she replied. Piers nodded and jotted down a note. "And yet," he continued, "the royal family has lasted for generations, supported by people who believe it's more than just show. Do you think those who stayed, like William and Kate, are wasting their lives?" "That's not my concern," Meghan said, brushing her cuff. "If they like it, good for them. Some people are happy being irrelevant." That line drew more noise from the crowd. Piers kept his voice calm. "Still, Meghan, you gained from that so-called irrelevance when you married into it. Don't you think that deserves some respect?" Meghan laughed lightly, though it sounded rehearsed. "Please. I gave them a burst of relevance," she said confidently. "I brought color, both literally and figuratively." Gasps filled the studio. Piers raised his eyebrow, but said nothing. "You're certainly not shy about your views," he finally commented. "Let's move on. Your relationship with the media. Some say you chase the spotlight when it suits you, and complain about it when it doesn't. I'd say," Meghan responded, leaning in slightly, "that people like you need to learn the difference between privacy and secrecy. But then again, if you knew that, you wouldn't have built your job on bothering people." That hit home. A few people in the audience shifted in discomfort, but Piers simply offered a faint smile. "If that's how you feel, Meghan," he said with a steady voice, "then tonight's going to be very interesting." You could already sense the heat in the room rising. When tension simmers just beneath the surface, it's only a matter of time before someone breaks. And tonight, Meghan's polished mask was beginning to slip, thanks to Piers Morgan's persistent questioning. The room felt colder, yet the air was heavy. By the end of this segment, Meghan wasn't the only one feeling the pressure. The audience began fidgeting, unsure whether to cheer, gasp, or walk out. The cameras kept rolling as Meghan lightly adjusted the lapel of her blazer, her smile tightening with every second. Her white blouse still glimmered under the lights, but her look was no longer calm, it was irritated. Piers leaned back, flipping through his notes, as if completely at ease. "Let's talk about Harry," he said softly, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. "Your relationship with Prince Harry has been watched around the world. Many believe he's changed a lot since meeting you. Some even say he's drifted from his family because of you. How do you answer that?" Meghan's eyes narrowed just slightly, though she kept her voice sweet. "Oh, Piers, I'm sorry you care so much about someone else's marriage. Are you happy at home? Do you even have a wife?" The whole room gasped. Piers stayed cool, smiling faintly. "Happily married, thank you," he replied. "But this isn't about me and my wife." "Of course it is," Meghan said sharply. "Because people like you need a villain to boost your ratings." "How charming!" Piers moved on. "A lot of royal watchers say Harry has become more distant, more angry, and more withdrawn since leaving the UK. Do you feel responsible for that?" Meghan let out a short laugh, her tone sharp. "Oh, you believe everything in the tabloids, don't you? He's the happiest he's ever been. Sorry if that doesn't fit your story." There were nervous laughs from the crowd. Piers tilted his head slightly. "So, no regrets? No second thoughts about how this affected his bond with his brother, his father, the royal family?" "None," Meghan said, her voice now more firm. "I don't lose sleep over people who wouldn't lift a finger when I needed help. Is that clear enough?" Even Piers raised an eyebrow at that. Still, he didn't back down. "Crystal," Piers replied, his voice steady. "Let's shift gears, then. Let's talk about your charity work. Some critics say your involvement feels more like photo ops than real effort. What's your response to that?" Meghan calmly uncrossed and recrossed her legs, settling back into her chair with a small smirk. "That's rich," she said. "People criticize me if I don't show up, and then call it vanity when I do. It's a lose-lose when you're me." Piers nodded thoughtfully. "Some might say that's just the cost of public life. Scrutiny is part of the job." Meghan didn't miss a beat. "And some might say," she replied coldly, "that you wouldn't know what sincerity looks like if it bit you on the Meghan." Piers cut in gently. "Let's keep it family-friendly." The crowd responded with a mix of laughter and awkward glances. Meghan gave a dismissive wave, her tight smile returning. "Fine," she muttered. "Let's pretend this is still civil." Piers gave the faintest grin at her words but pressed forward. "You've often claimed the royal family was distant, even unkind to you. But some staff members, anonymously, have described you as hard to work with. They say you were demanding, even manipulative. How do you respond to that?" Her smile disappeared, replaced by a flash of anger. "I'd tell those people to grow a spine and say it to my face instead of hiding behind sources. Cowards, all of them." Even the camera crew seemed to pause, sensing the tension thickening. Piers didn't stop. "Still, Meghan, when that kind of feedback keeps coming up, don't you think there might be some truth to it? Can they all be wrong? They're upset because I had the nerve to speak my mind," she snapped. "Because I refused to act like the perfect little duchess while they whispered behind my back." For the first time, Piers leaned in just slightly, lowering his voice. "Do you ever wonder if you made mistakes? That maybe there was a better way to handle things?" Meghan blinked slowly, her tone soaked in sarcasm. "Sure," she said. "My biggest mistake was thinking that this family, this system, or people like you could actually be decent." A sharp gasp rose from the audience, but Piers kept his face neutral. He calmly adjusted his notes, letting her words linger for a moment before continuing. "Meghan," he said evenly, "you've made your opinion clear, about the press, the royal family, and myself, it seems. But I have to ask, do you even care anymore what the public thinks? Or is this all just about Meghan now?" Meghan's lips pulled into a defiant smile. "I care about the opinions that matter," she said with cool confidence. "But frankly, Piers, the general public? Not really. The audience stirred, a few giving nervous chuckles while others remained frozen. Piers leaned back in his chair, his hands resting calmly on his lap. Though he remained composed, a slight tension showed in his jaw. "Well," he said in a low voice, "thank you for your honesty. If nothing else, it's eye-opening." The cameras faded to a commercial, but the tension in the studio stayed sharp. It was so strong, it felt like something you could reach out and grab. The audience was no longer just uncomfortable, they were restless. Meghan's image of calm and charm was slowly fading, and while Piers remained collected, it was clear he was approaching his limit. What had started as an interview was quickly turning into something else entirely, a slow-burning showdown built on ego and pride, with the live studio audience caught in the middle. By the time the commercial ended, Meghan sat stiffly in her seat, still dressed in her white blouse and neat black blazer. Her arms were now crossed tightly, her jaw clenched, and her eyes avoided Piers as he quietly flipped through his notes. The atmosphere had shifted. The air in the room now felt heavier, colder. Even the audience was unsure, uncertain whether to clap between segments or stay silent. Piers looked up, wearing his familiar host's smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. His voice was still smooth and professional, but there was a sense of finality in it. "Welcome back," he said. "We're here with Meghan Markle, talking about her life, her work, and her views on just about everything." Meghan exhaled through her nose, offering a smile that seemed forced. "I think we've covered just about everything there is to talk about," she said flatly. "Oh, I don't think so," Piers replied lightly. "I'd say we're just getting started." A few laughs trickled out from the audience, nervous and unsure. Piers leaned forward just slightly. "Let's revisit your departure from the royal family. You've said you felt trapped, unsupported, and restricted. Do you believe the monarchy itself is broken at its core?" Meghan uncrossed her legs, leaned back, and let out a dry laugh. "You really don't stop, do you?" she said. "Always digging, always trying to stir things up." Piers remained composed. "It's a question, Meghan, not a trap. Do you believe the institution is flawed?" She rolled her eyes dramatically, her voice sharp. "I think the monarchy is old-fashioned. A leftover from another time. And I wasn't going to let it destroy me like it's destroyed others." The audience rustled, some whispered to each other, others sat still and stiff. Piers gave a slow nod. "Clear," he said. "But do you ever think that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't only the system? That how you handled things might have also played a role?" Meghan let out a sharp laugh. "Of course, blame the woman. How original." "I didn't say blame," Piers replied calmly. "I said consider. Do you take any responsibility at all for how things unfolded?" Her smirk returned, but this time it felt cold. "I take responsibility for putting myself first, for once. That seems to be the real problem for people like you and honestly half of Britain." The crowd shifted again. Some nodded quietly in support. Others looked more uncomfortable than ever. But Piers kept his posture firm and his questions coming. "Let's move to your media ventures," Piers continued, keeping his voice steady. "Your podcast, the Netflix deals, the children's book. Some critics say it all feels less like passion projects and more like rebranding yourself. What would you say to that?" Meghan raised her eyebrows. "Well, Piers, critics always have something to say, don't they? When I stayed silent, they called me weak. When I spoke up, I was suddenly manipulative. Maybe the real issue isn't me, it's people like you who can't handle a woman who knows her own power." Piers folded his hands together, still calm, though his expression had grown sharper. "Or," he said slowly, "perhaps the problem is when people confuse control with entitlement. Do you think your critics might have a point?" Meghan's laugh was cold. "You'd love that, wouldn't you?" she said, eyes narrowing. "For me to sit here and say I'm the villain you've always imagined me to be. Sorry to disappoint." A low murmur spread through the audience. Even the crew members behind the scenes exchanged glances. But Piers didn't flinch. His gaze remained locked on Meghan. "This isn't about villains and heroes," he said firmly. "It's about choices and consequences." Leaning forward, Meghan's voice turned openly mocking. "Oh, thank you for the lecture, Piers. Please tell me more about consequences. You clearly think you're an expert on public disasters." There were a few chuckles from the back of the room, but most of the audience stayed quiet. Piers gave a thin smile. "I've had my share," he admitted. "But unlike you, I've never pretended to be a victim while profiting from it." That landed hard. Meghan's eyes turned sharp, her tone low and biting. "Wow," she said. "You really believe you've figured me out, don't you? The grumpy old host with his little TV show finally gets a chance to take down the Duchess." "That's not what this is," Piers answered quickly, though his jaw had tightened. "Really?" Meghan scoffed, throwing her hands up. "Because it sure feels like a public stoning. Maybe next you'll toss me in the river and ask if I float." The audience gasped, loud and shocked. Even Piers blinked for a moment, surprised by how far she'd gone. He took a breath, lowering his voice. "You know," he said, his tone like ice, "I came into this interview hoping for a real conversation. One where we could talk about your choices, your legacy. But it's becoming painfully clear, you're not interested in truth, Meghan. You're just here to deflect, insult, and act like the same tired story plays on repeat." Meghan crossed her arms tightly. "Oh, please, spare me the moral speech. You're just mad I'm not crying on your show like the rest of your guests." The room fell completely silent. Even the buzzing lights above seemed quieter. Piers didn't move. The camera zoomed in slowly as he tapped his fingers once against the desk. "Well," he said softly, "I think we've given you more than enough time to show the world exactly who you are. And you haven't disappointed." Meghan raised an eyebrow, clearly unfazed. She leaned back in her chair, wearing a pleased expression. Piers offered a faint smile and said, "Let's take another break." But before the screen cut to commercial, the cameras captured something flashing in his eyes, controlled, cold, and final. When the show returned from commercial, the mood in the studio had changed completely. The tension was no longer just under the surface. It filled the space like a thundercloud. Meghan sat stiffly, her arms crossed in defiance. Piers, while still appearing calm, had a fire in his stare that hadn't been there before. What started as a big celebrity interview had clearly turned into something darker, more like a slow-motion collapse, one everyone in the room would remember for a long time. The camera light turned red again. The audience, still unusually quiet, gave only a weak round of applause. Meghan barely reacted. She tugged at the sleeve of her white blouse, her black blazer still sharp and perfect, but her jaw was tight and her chin was lifted with silent challenge. Piers leaned slightly forward, his hands resting neatly on the desk in front of him. This time, his smile was gone, replaced with a straight line that said everything. "Welcome back," he said, voice even but heavy. "We're here with Meghan Markle, though it seems our discussion has taken quite a turn." Meghan gave a theatrical roll of her eyes, so big that a few people in the audience audibly gasped. "Oh, don't act surprised, Piers," she said. Her voice was soaked in sarcasm. "This is the exact kind of gotcha moment you live for, isn't it?" Piers tilted his head. "Actually, Meghan, what I care about is asking real questions and hearing real answers. Something you seem determined to avoid." Her lips twisted into a smug smile. "Maybe that's because your questions aren't even worth answering." The audience shifted again. One person coughed. Someone else whispered, "Wow," under their breath. Piers took a breath and pressed on. "All right," he said. "Let's try this one more time. Earlier, you said you left the royal family because you felt trapped and silenced. Fair enough. But do you ever reflect on the fact that you knew, should have known, what you were getting into? Do you take any responsibility for that choice? Meghan gave a dry, sarcastic laugh. Ah, yes. The classic blame the woman argument. She should have known her place. Very original. Piers sat forward, his tone firm. This isn't about place. This is about accountability. Do you take any? I take accountability for not letting that system break me. She shot back, her voice growing more direct. Does that count? The audience murmured softly. Some seemed to admire her defiance, while others were visibly uneasy. Piers pressed his lips together and gave a small nod. Very well, he said. Let's talk about Harry. Many believe he's changed since meeting you. That he's pushed away his friends, his family, even his home country. Do you feel any regret for how isolated he's become? Meghan's confident smile faltered for a split second before she replied. Her tone turned icy. Please. Harry makes his own decisions. He's not a puppet on a string. But of course, you'd rather believe that I control him. That's not what I said, Piers replied sharply. But you seem a bit quick to defend yourself. Meghan leaned in now, her voice low and mocking. Defensive? No, Piers. I just don't feel like explaining my marriage to someone like you. Maybe you're just jealous. Is that what this is? The audience gasped again, louder this time. Even Piers blinked at her words, caught off guard. He straightened in his chair, his fingers tapping once more on the desk. I think we're done here, Piers said quietly. His voice didn't rise, but it was sharp enough to cut through the thick silence. Meghan tilted her head, clearly amused. What happened to your tough questions? She teased. Out of steam already? Piers stood up. The studio went dead silent. Even the camera crew froze, unsure of what was coming next. No, he replied, his voice calm but cold. What I'm out of is patience. Meghan's smirk faded slightly. There was now a hint of surprise behind her eyes. Piers continued, firm and steady. You came here tonight with the chance to speak freely. To answer questions millions of people want answers to. But instead, you've spent the last hour being smug, dismissive, and honestly, disrespectful. Not just to me, but to everyone watching. Meghan opened her mouth to respond, but Piers held up his hand. Don't, he said sharply. I've interviewed presidents, prime ministers, and real royals. People who didn't always agree with me, but still showed up and acted like adults. You. He shook his head slowly. You've confused this studio for your Instagram feed. You think you can control every word, every shot, every story. But this. He gestured around the room. This isn't your echo chamber. The audience remained completely still, eyes wide, breaths held. You want to play the victim? Fine. You want to be the misunderstood hero? Go ahead. But not here. Not on my show, Piers said. His voice now carried across every inch of the studio, firm and final. I won't sit here while you insult my work, my viewers, and my intelligence. We're done. You can leave now. The words dropped like thunder. Meghan's eyes flashed with fire. For a second, it seemed like she might argue. But instead, she gave a short laugh, calmly removed her mic, and stood up. Well, she said coolly, adjusting the lapel of her blazer. At least now everyone's seen the real Piers Morgan. Bitter. Small. Predictable. And now, Piers replied without a pause, they've seen the real Meghan Markle. Arrogant, entitled, and worst of all, boring. The audience gasped loudly. Meghan's lips tightened. Without another word, she turned and walked off the set, the sharp click of her heels echoing across the stage as she disappeared behind the curtain. The cameras followed her until she vanished from view. The sound of the studio door closing behind her rang out like the end of a show. Piers calmly adjusted his tie, returned to his seat, and looked directly into the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice now completely composed. "I think that about sums it up. We'll be back after the break." The crowd erupted in shocked applause as the screen faded to black. "So, what do you think? Did Piers take it too far? Or was Meghan's attitude the reason for the meltdown? We want to know where you stand. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Did Piers cross a line, or was Meghan responsible for how the interview unraveled? We're curious what you think. If you enjoyed this incredible exchange and want more eye-opening moments like it, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more intense behind-the-scenes showdowns, powerful interviews, and the kind of stories others are too afraid to tell. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next big moment. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.